national headline today, a dinner meeting between Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and US President-elect Donald Trump has become the talk of the town, and for all the usual Trump-style reasons. Last week, Prime Minister Trudeau flew to Mar-a-Lago, Trump's lavish Florida estate, for what was supposed to be a serious conversation about trade and border security. But it seems the spotlight is now on Trump's colorful comment rather than the politics. After their meeting, Trump took to his favorite platform, Truth Social, to post this. He said, "It was a pleasure to have dinner the other night with Governor Justin Trudeau of great state of Canada." Yes, you heard that right. Trump called Trudeau the Governor of Canada, and the internet, as you can imagine, had a field day. But jokes aside, the dinner had some high-stakes discussion. Trump warned Trudeau that a 25% tariff on Canadian goods could be on the table if Canada doesn't do more to stop illegal immigration and drug trafficking into the US. Trudeau pushed back, saying such a tariff could devastate Canada's economy. And Trump? Well, he reportedly had an unconventional suggestion. He floated the idea that Canada could just become 51st state of the United States. Trump later doubled down on the remark, repeating it in an NBC interview and another Truth Social post. He said, "I look further to seeing the governor again soon so that we may continue our in-depth talk on tariff and trade. The result will be truly spectacular for all." Now, spectacular or not, Trump's comment has added another layer to drama to an already tense situation. He has been critical of Canada and Mexico, accusing both the countries of not doing enough to curb illegal immigration and drug trafficking. Publicly, though, both leaders played nicely. Trump called the dinner very productive, while Trudeau described it as excellent. So, what's next? Will Canada dodge Trump's tariff threat, or will the Governor of Canada make another trip to Mar-a-Lago? One thing's for sure, this story is far from over. Tonight we are diving into a troubling case that's making headlines and raising concern among Indian families worldwide. The increasing number of attacks on Indian students abroad. The numbers are not only shocking but demand urgent attention. First of all, let's start with the hard facts. According to the report represented to the Rajya Sabha by the Ministry of External Affairs, attacks on Indian students studying overseas has significantly risen since 2019. Now, these incidents has claimed the lives of 20 Indian students, while a staggering 80% of these cases occurring in two countries, the United States and Canada. Now, over the past 5 years, 9 Indian students have lost their lives in Canada due to assaults, while 7 Indian students were killed in the US. Under similar circumstances I'm talking about. And you know what surprising part is? These are not isolated incidents. They paint a grim picture of safety for Indian students in these countries. But Canada's statistics reveal an even darker story. Beyond 9 deaths from the attacks, the country reported 163 deaths of Indian students in total over the same period. That's right, 163 lives are lost. The cause of these deaths vary, including road accident, health issues, and tragically violence. Meanwhile, the other countries have also reported similar incidents. Russia recorded the highest number of attacks on Indian students, while 14 in total, though unfortunately none of these were fatal. Now, if we are talking about worldwide, then violence against Indian students have also been reported in Ireland, Iran, China, Italy, Australia, etc. Each of these incidents underscores the vulnerability that is faced by Indian students who are living far from their home. For many Indian families, sending their children abroad for higher education is just like a dream, one that involves immense sacrifice, both emotionally and financially. India has become the largest source of international students globally, with more than 1.3 million Indians that are studying overseas, including 8 lakh in Canada alone. Now, these students leave their homes with hopes of better opportunity and brighter future. But for too many, the dreams is overshadowed by fear. Fear of racism, discrimination, and in some cases, violence. Now, here the problem goes beyond isolated attacks. It is part of a larger issue of systematic racism that Indian communities often face in foreign countries. In Canada, where Indian students make up a significant portion of the international student body, safety measures and support networks are clearly not enough. Let me tell you, this is not about pointing fingers at a specific country. It's a global issue. Each country that welcomes the international student has a responsibility to ensure its safety and well-being. However, given the statistics, Canada and the US must do little more, not only because they host the largest number of Indian students, but because they owe it to those students who provide the protection and support that they deserve. There is, however, a glimmer of hope. Awareness around this issue is growing, and Indian authorities are working with their counterparts in these countries just to ensure the safety of the students. But it's a long road ahead. Families back home, universities abroad, and even the students themselves need better system in place to address these challenges. As this issue continues to unfold, it's important to stay informed and demand action. For the Indian students, the dream of education abroad should not come at the cost of safety. We'll keep an update with more developments on this critical story. We bring you an inspiring story of young British Indian woman who has achieved a remarkable milestone at one of the world's most prestigious universities. At just 20 years old, Anoushka Khali has made history by becoming President-elect of Cambridge Union for Easter 2025. The Cambridge Union, established back in 1815, is not just a debating society. It's an iconic institution renowned for defending free speech and fostering critical discourse. Over the years, it has hosted one of the world's most greatest minds. Anoushka Khali will lead this historic institution. But who is Anoushka Khali? Let's talk about that. Anoushka is currently pursuing a degree in English literature at Sydney Sussex College, Cambridge. Her academic interest and passion for literature has clearly translated into her leadership journey. At the recent election, she secured 126 votes, running uncontested. As the serving debates officer of the Union, she already has a solid foundation of experience. Her campaign focused on strengthening ties with cultural society at Cambridge, such as the India Society, which is run by the students. In her own words, Anoushka expressed how delighted and honored she was to take on this role. She also emphasized her commitment to expanding diversity and access at the Union. She aims to make the Union more inclusive through greater collaboration with cultural groups. Now, this vision highlights her focus on ensuring that students from all backgrounds feel represented in this historic forum for debate. But you know what this could mean for Cambridge University? For over 2 centuries, the Cambridge Union has been a bastion of intellectual thoughts and debate. Its website proudly proclaims its role as a central forum for student discussion in Cambridge. Notably, the alumni include celebrated novelist Robert Harris and British Indian peer and founder of Cobra Beer, Karan. Each of these individuals left a lasting legacy at the Union, and now Anoushka is poised to add her name in this iconic list. Her vision for the Union reflects the changing dynamics of today's student body. With over 20,000 students at Cambridge University representing diverse culture and perspective, her focus on inclusivity is timely and crucial. By strengthening partnership with cultural societies, she aimed to make the Union not just a platform for debate, but also a space where every student feels that they belong. Anoushka's story is not just about a title, it's about representation and breaking the barriers. As a young British Indian woman, her election signals a step forward in diversifying leadership at an institution that has traditionally been seen as exclusive. Her leadership comes at a time when conversation about inclusion and equality are more important than ever. Now, since its foundation in 1815, the Union has been fostering open dialogue and free speech. Hosting figures like Churchill and the Dalai Lama is a testament of its global reputation. However, it's also a reflection of its ability to evolve with time. By electing leaders like Anoushka, the Union continues to stay relevant, reflecting the voices of the next generation. Now, Anoushka's term as president will begin in Easter 2025 term, and her plans are already in motion. From collaborating with cultural groups to bringing in diverse speakers who can inspire and challenge students, she has a clear roadmap. Her presidency is likely to bring fresh perspective and ensure that the union remains a space for meaningful dialogue. Today, we're going to talk about Indians that are involved in United States politics. We spotlight how this dynamic community is breaking barriers and earning recognition in key leadership roles, specifically in Donald Trump's second-term cabinet. So, what are we waiting for? Let's take a closer look at these extraordinary individuals and how their stories highlight a larger trend of Indian American influence in politics. Our story begins with Harmeet Kaur Dhillon, a name that's making headlines after Donald Trump nominated her as Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights at the Department of Justice. Born in Chandigarh, India, Harmeet moved to the United States as a child and grew up in the rural North Carolina. Her journey from a Sikh household in small southern town to one of the country's most prominent consecutive lawyers is nothing short of inspiring. With a law degree from University of Virginia and a career spanning a private practice, constitutional law and Republican politics, Harmeet has consistently championed civil liberties. She has taken on big tech for censoring free speech, defending workers against woke corporate policies, and representing Christians barred from praying together during pandemic. Trump himself described Harmeet as tireless defender of constitutional right, somebody who will ensure civil rights are enforced fairly and firmly. Next on the list, we have Usha Vance, who is set to become the first Indian origin Second Lady of the United States. Her story is one of quiet strength and cultural pride. Usha was born to an Indian immigrant parents in San Diego, and later on she graduated from Yale Law School. Now, it was there when she met J.D. Vance, the vice president-elect. Their marriage in 2014, which included a Hindu ceremony, symbolized the beautiful blend of culture. While Usha often stays away from the spotlight, her contribution to her husband's success are undeniable. As a legislator and a supporter, she embodies the grace and determination that define Indian American community. Then at the third place, we have Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, a Kolkata-born health policy expert, is slated to lead the National Institutes of Health. With a budget of over $47 million, this agency is at the forefront of medical innovation. Jay's journey began in a Hindu household, and he later became a professor at Stanford University. His work on targeted pandemic policies gained him the national attention, specifically for prioritizing individual freedoms while addressing public health challenges. Under his leadership, the NIH could see a focus on balancing innovation with ethical health policy, a statement to how Indian American leaders bring unique perspective to the table. Kash Patel, another rising star of Indian American heritage, has been named the director of the FBI. Born to Gujarati parents who immigrated from Uganda, Kash's family story reflects resilience and adaptability. As a former federal prosecutor and intelligence expert, Kash became a trusted member of Trump's inner circle during his first term. Known for his sharp understanding of national security, he is set to reform the FBI with a focus on transparency and accountability. And then comes Vivek Ramaswamy. The youngest star in the lineup is Ramaswamy, a biotech entrepreneur and author who will co-lead the Department of Government Efficiency alongside Elon Musk. Now, this informal advisory department aims to cut government red tape and streamline federal agencies. Born to Indian immigrants from Kerala, Vivek's journey from Harvard and Yale to becoming a political thinker represents the intellectual brilliance Indian Americans bring to governance. Then finally, we have Tulsi Gabbard, a former Democrat and now a key Republican ally who has been named Director of National Intelligence. A four-term Congresswoman, Tulsi's story as the first Hindu elected to Congress and a military veteran with 3 deployments resonates deeply. Her transition from Democrats to Republicans shows her commitment to serving beyond party lines. But here's a question. Why so many Indian Americans are excelling in US policies? Well, it's a mix of cultural value, hard work, and focus on education. Indian Americans are among the most educated migrant group in the US, often pursuing fields that emphasize leadership and problem solving. This foundation, combined with deep sense of community and the ability to navigate diverse culture, has propelled them into influential roles. Moreover, the diaspora's ability to balance Indian tradition with American ideals has allowed them to resonate with a broader audience. Leaders like Harmeet Dillon, Usha Vance, and Vivek Ramaswamy are representing the best of both the worlds. The inclusion of Indian Americans in Trump 2.0 cabinet reflects their growing influence in Americans' governance. But you know what? This isn't just about politics. It's about representation, breaking stereotypes and showcasing the immense potential of immigrant community. As we look to the future, one thing is clear. Indian Americans are not just participating in US politics, they are shaping its very fabric. Let me tell you a story. It's all about so-called perfect immigrant. The one who follows every law, fills out every form correctly, pays all their fee and patiently waits for their turn. But you know what? Here's a twist. America's system make it almost impossible for this perfect immigrant to exist. And now, Donald Trump's campaign promises of mass deportation threaten to ripple families apart and cost the US economy billions. So let's break it down. First, let's talk about the numbers. The US immigration system is buried under massive backlog. At the end of fiscal year 2023, there were 2.46 million pending cases. Yes, you heard it right. Million. These aren't people breaking the law. Many of them are trying to do it the right way. Now take visas for example. If you are an unmarried child of a US citizen from Mexico, one of the highest priority category, your application might finally be reviewed after 20 years. Imagine waiting 2 decades for the chance to join your family. That's the reality of those who applied in 2004 and are just now being considered. Then the financial burden is another roadblock. Immigration filing fees can range from $250 to $1,440 per form. And often you need to file multiple forms, sometimes repeatedly. Add to this the cost of hiring a lawyer, an expense many families cannot afford. And you're looking at a process that's out of the reach for most. And yet, studies show that immigrants with legal representation are far more likely to succeed in their cases. Without a lawyer, your chances are null. Now, let's address a hard truth. The system is so broken that it pushes many to break the law out of desperation. Common violation includes using fake documents to get a job or entering sham marriages to speed up the process. These aren't hardened criminals. They are people trying to feed their family while stuck in a system that could take decades to resolve. Well, things don't stop there. Even minor mistakes like missing a deadline for reviewing work authorization can turn an otherwise law-abiding immigrant into a target for deportation. Then comes the economic reality. Here's where it gets even more complicated. Immigrants, including undocumented ones, are essential to the US economy. Back in 2022, undocumented households paid $35.1 billion in taxes. That's money funding schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. Yet these same people are vilified, even as industries like agriculture and construction rely on their labor. If Trump were to carry out this plan for mass deportation, it would cost the US over $300 billion. Yes, that's billion with a B. On the top of that, deporting million would create worker shortage, driving up grocery prices and leaving businesses scrambling to fill position. Despite the chaos that it would cause, this riotic resonates with many Americans. Some believe the myth that undocumented immigrants are lawbreakers who refuse to follow the rules. Others genuinely think deporting illegals will create more opportunities for the citizens. But here's a catch. Many of these voters, including Latinos, don't realize how flawed the system is. In 2024, Trump gained 14 percentage points more Latino support as compared to 2020. It's a complex issue rooted in misinformation and fear. But fixing this broken system seems like an obvious solution, right? But bipartisan attempts at reform have failed for decades. Even lawmakers admit that they struggle to navigate the immigration process's complexity. Policies that were considered reasonable and compassionate in the 1980s, like the Refugee Act or the Immigration Reform and Control Act, are now seen as radical. Today, both sides are stuck, and while they argue, millions of families live in limbo. Now, let's not forget the human cost. Now, when Trump says that he will deport lawbreakers, many people don't realize how broadly that net can cast. The father who used a fake social security number to get a job could be turned away from his children. A mother who overstayed her visa while waiting for a green card could face deportation. Now, these aren't faceless crimes. They are neighbors, co-workers, and even friends. So, in the end, the next time if you hear somebody saying immigrants should just follow the law, ask them this: how can they when the system is designed to fail them? America's immigration process is broken, and it's time that we stop blaming the people caught in its web. After all, the perfect immigration does not exist. Not because immigrants are trying, but because America won't let them. Tonight, we dive into a diplomatic storm brewing between Canada and India. The controversy? Indian visa. Specifically, the denial of visa to some Canadian Sikhs, many of whom are supporters of Khalistan movement. Now, this has sparked heated debate, allegations, and even protests. But what is really going on? Let's break it down. Indian visas have become a flashpoint in the already strained relationship between the two nations. Recently, Global News published a report claiming that India is weaponizing visa to silence its critics. It alleges that some Sikh Canadians are being asked to sign letters that they are denouncing Khalistan, an independent state for Sikhs in India's Punjab, in exchange for travel permits. But is this claim as simple as it sounds? Let's break it down. The Khalistan movement, which advocates for a separate Sikh homeland, has long been a storm in India-Canada relationship. India has labelled it as a separatist and terror-linked agenda, and many of its leaders, like late Hardeep Singh Nijjar, are based in Canada. Nijjar, who was president of Sarai Gurdwara and designated as a terrorist by India, was killed last year. Canada accused India of being involved in his death, though there were no evidences. And since then, the tensions have been escalated. Now take the case of Bikramjit Singh Sandhar, a former president of Guru Nanak Sikh Gurdwara in Sarai. Sandhar applied for an Indian visa back in 2016, but it was denied. He claimed that Indian officials flagged him for his pro-Khalistan speeches. What shocked him even more? Let me tell you. Allegedly, through intermediaries, he was offered a form to sign. This letter renounced the Khalistan and declared loyalty to India. Sandhar refused, calling it an attempt to control personal beliefs. Now, this story is echoed by others in Canada's Sikh community as well. The World Sikh Organization, which is a pro-Khalistan group, even accused India of using visa as a primary tool of foreign interference. But here's where the plot thickens. Many of these Khalistan activists also demand the shutdown of Indian consulates in Canada. So, the question is, why the outrage when denied visa? India's consular services in Canada are already under a lot of pressure. Pro-Khalistani groups have disrupted visa camps, even targeting women and children. Last year, India temporarily suspended visa services due to security threats. And recently, several consular camps were cancelled after Canadian police refused to ensure safety. One such attack outside the Toronto temple even involved a Sikh Canadian police officer allegedly supporting these attacks. Now here's the irony. These camps, often disturbed by protesters, serves many Sikhs and Indians in Canada. As Indian diplomats have pointed out that these camps helps the diaspora with vital documentation like the pension verification. So the disruption don't just hurt the Indian officials, they directly impact ordinary Canadian Sikhs that are seeking consular help. From India's perspective, denying visa to Khalistani supporter isn't foreign interference. It's a matter of national security. The Khalistan movement has a history of violent attacks in India, and its leader abroad often call for its country's division. India sees these visa restrictions as a way to protect its sovereignty. And it's not just about Canada. Indian officials have been targeted by Khalistani groups worldwide. But let's flip the script here. Did you know Canada has denied visa to Indian officials in past year? Let me tell you, back in 2010, Canada rejected visa for Indian Armed Forces personnel, accusing them of human rights abuses. A retired CRPF officer, Tejinder Singh Dhillon, was famously turned away at Vancouver airport in 2017. The Indian government had to demand an apology for this diplomatic insult. So, visa spat between the two nations aren't new. They are just taking a sharper edge recently. Put this into perspective. Indian consulates in Canada process thousands of visa applications every single year. According to reports, around 70% of those denied are linked to Khalistani activities or any propaganda. And while Khalistani group cry, most of the Indian diaspora in Canada, which is approximately a community of 1.4 million, supports India's stance against separatism. This is evident in the strong turnout for pro-India events, even in the face of Khalistan disruption. So here's the question. Is India denying visa to silent critics, or is it protecting its national integrity? The answer depends on who is asking. For Canada, this is framed as interference. For India, it's a necessary stand against Khalistan movement. Now, what's clear though is that the visa battle is just one chapter in much larger, complex story of two nations navigating a turbulent relationship. What do you think about this controversy? Indian tourists are becoming a crucial pillar for the US economy, particularly at the time when domestic leisure spending is slowing and international arrivals from East Asia is increasing. Visits from China are down by 44.5% as compared to 2019, while arrivals from Japan and South Korea have declined by 50.8% and 23.9% respectively. Even European market, including the UK, Germany and France, are yet to fully recover. Amid this slump, Indian travelers are stepping up to fill the gap, exploring not just major cities like New York and San Francisco, but also smaller cities and secondary markets, spending economic benefits across the United States. Now, recognizing this opportunity, the US hotels are going the extra mile to cater Indian tourists. Properties are introducing touches that resonates with Indian preferences, such as serving chai and samosa in the lobby and offering popular Indian TV channels in guest rooms. According to Laura Day Blake, the CEO of Asian American Hotel Owner Association, which represents owner of around 60% of US hotels, Indian travelers often favor budget and mid-scale accommodation, making these updates even more impactful. The efforts are paying off, with travel firms reporting a more than 50% increase in the US booking by Indian travelers in 2024, that is tripling 2019 level. Airbnb have also observed a 45% rise in night bookings by Indian guests over past 3 years. Now, Indian tourists are not only fulfilling the void left by East Asian travelers, but they're also standing out for their unique travel patterns. They often prioritize the experience, from iconic road trips through national parks to visit to small towns attraction, and that other tourists might overlook. Now, this focus on experiences, combined with their tendency to stay longer and spend money, is making Indian tourists a key market for the US tourism industry. On the other hand, affluent travelers from East Asia, particularly China, are increasingly opting for regional destinations in South Asia over long-haul trip to the United States, further highlighting the importance of the Indian market. Now, Indians' growing middle class and growing economic power are driving this surge in international travel. Now, back in 2019, only 3% of individuals held a passport, but by 2024, this figure has risen significantly thanks to the streamlined application processes and growing appetite for exploring the world. For many Indian families, a trip to the US represents more than just a vacation. It's like a status symbol. Social media is brimming with images of Indian tourists at iconic landmarks like Times Square, Disneyland, and Golden Gate Bridge. Additionally, Indian students in the US, numbering over 2 lakh, bring their families to the country for graduation and holidays, adding to the tourist influx. Now, looking ahead, industry experts like CEO of TripOffice.com predicts continued growth in occupancy rate and revenue in 2025, and that is driven by younger, experience-focused Indian travelers. This optimism comes as a relief to the US tourism industry, which had been bracing for weaker revenue due to persistent inflation and post-pandemic normalization of travel demands. Indian tourists are not only stabilizing the industry, but they're also driving revenue growth in many areas. This trend is more than just a boost for travel sector. It signifies deepening cultural connection and economic opportunity, As Indian tourists bring their unique preferences and energy to the US hotel, they are helping to build bridge between two of the world's largest democracy. So, the next time you spot chai and samosa on the hotel menu in US, remember, it's more than just a snack. It's a reflection of changing times and growing ties between India and the United States. The United Kingdom finds itself at the crossroad of culture and health. A new bill in Parliament has reignited debates on first cousin marriages, a practice deeply rooted in tradition but increasingly under scrutiny for health concern. While some call for an outright ban, others, including Indian origin MP Iqbal Ahmed, argues for a more sensitive approach. So, let's dive into this complex story with the science, culture, and societal norms. Richard Holman, a Conservative MP, introduced the Marriage Prohibited Degree of Relationship Bill in the House of Commons. His proposal seeks to ban first cousin marriages, citing health risks for children that are born from such unions. Well, the studies show that first cousin marriages could actually double the risk of birth defects in children. Holman emphasized that rates of these marriages remain particularly high in specific diaspora community, including British, Pakistani, and Irish travelers. Globally, around 10% of marriages involve first cousins, with some regions reporting much higher rates. For example, let me tell you, in rural Pakistan, over 80% of marriages are between first cousins. In the UK, this tradition is prevalent among South Asian communities, specifically the British Pakistani, where nearly 60% of marriages fall into this category. Then enter Iqbal Ahmed, an independent MP with roots in Gujarat, India. He opposes the proposed ban, but he acknowledges the health concern. Instead, he advocates for a public health-focused solution. Mohammed highlighted the cultural significance of cousin marriage and the community across the Middle East, South Asia, and parts of Africa. He said, and I quote, "Family intermarriages strengthen bonds and can provide financial stability, but we cannot ignore the health risk." He proposes advanced genetic testing and public education, similar to successful programs in Persian Gulf countries where mandatory genetic screening for couples are already in place. But Holman and other supporters argue that cultural practices should not come at the cost of health risk. Now, his bill has gained a backing from several MPs. Holman, on the other hand, cited evidence from the Oxford Journal of Law and Religion, which warns that children born from first cousin couple face a lot of genetic disorder as compared to the general population. Now, the impact of these conditions extend beyond the families, placing a significant strain on the UK's national health services. And yet, Mohammed warns against stigmatizing community. He argues that ban could alienate minorities, creating division instead of fostering understanding. We must focus on health awareness rather than this prohibition. Now, if we talk about India, then cousin marriages are also part of cultural fabric, specifically in South Indian community, where cross-cousin marriages between a person with their maternal uncle child are actually common. But here the focus has shifted towards health awareness. Increasingly educated families are opting for genetic counseling before marrying. So, what's next? The bill has passed its first reading, but it faces a long road ahead. Without government backing, it is unlikely to become a law. However, the debate has sparked a broader conversation about how cultural traditions intersect with health issues. The question remains the same. Should health concern override cultural tradition or not? Or can we thrive a balance by fostering awareness and providing a resource? One thing is certain, this debate touches lives beyond parliament. It's about culture, identity, and health of future generations. In a case that has drawn significant attention, a trial date has been set for Riddhi Patel, who stands accused for making threats against members of Bakersfield City Council. The accusation stems from an incident earlier this year that has raised concern over public safety, free speech, and consequences of violent rioting. Let me tell you what exactly happened. So on April 10, 2024, Patel made a public comment during a city council meeting, which authorities say included threat to kill council members. In a charged moment, Patel allegedly said, "I remind you that these holidays that we practice, that other people in Global South practice, believe in violent revolution against these oppressive and I hope that one day somebody brings the guillotine and kill all of you. Now, this comment shocked both council members and the public in attendance. It came at a time of heightened security at a city council meeting. In fact, reports incline that increased security measures, including metal detectors and more police presence, had put in the place in response to the ongoing protests and demand for action on political issues, such as the ceasefire resolution regarding Gaza. Protests have been growing in Bakersfield, with many residents urging the council to take a stand on international issues like the conflict in Gaza. But what started as a call for action turned into a tense and, in some cases, confrontational atmosphere at City Council meeting. It was in this environment that Patel's alleged comments were made. Following Patel's statement, the local authorities took immediate action, arresting Patel on April 10, 2024. Patel made their first court appearance 2 days later on April 12 and pleaded not guilty to the charges. Well, the charges against Patel are pretty serious. According to the court, Patel faces 24 criminal charges related to alleged threats. Now, these charges include felony count of making criminal threats and other related offences. Patel's actions are being scrutinized as a clear example of how words can entice fear and potentially violence can tense public settings. California, where this case is taking place, has strict laws regarding threats of violence. According to the California Penal Code, making criminal threats in a felony punishable up to 3 years in state prison. But in this case, Patel faces multiple charges which could result in even severe penalties if convicted. Even recently, Kern County judge scheduled Patel's trial to begin on January 27, 2025. Now, this long wait for trial will give both sides time to prepare. But it also raises a serious question about the balance between the free speech and public safety. While freedom of speech is a constitutional right in the United States, there are limits to that right, particularly when it comes to enticing violence. The US Supreme Court has long ruled that speech that entices violence is not protected under the First Amendment. In this case, the question is whether Patel's word crossed the line or not. Now, this particular meeting on April 10 was one of the many where heightened emotions and political issues have been in the spotlight. It's important to note that this incident occurred just after a series of protests that highlighted deep divides over US foreign policy and international conflict. The City Council had been facing increasing pressure from activists and tensions were running high. In 2024, protests over global issues has become more frequent across the US, specifically in cities with diverse population like Bakersfield. The rise in activism surrounding issues like Israel-Palestine conflict and climate changes have led to more issues at public meetings, as people demand that their elected officials take stand on these pressing issues. Bakersfield, however, is not alone in this issue. Across the US, cities have seen an increase in protests, specifically over political and human rights matters. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, over 40% of US cities reported an increase in protests between 2017 and 2022, with many of these protests being sparked by divisive global issues. As the trial dates for Riddhi Patel approaches, the legal and ethnic questions surrounding this case will continue to unfold. How far can public figures and everyday citizens go in their rioting before it becomes a threat to public safety? And how do we protect the right of free speech while ensuring that those who engage in violent and threatening speech are held accountable? For now, Patel remains out on bail as the proceeding continues. Now, what will happen next, only time will tell. But till then, do follow TimesXP for this developing story. Today we have an interesting story of hard work, determination and success. It's the story of Jay Chaudhry, the CEO of Scalar, who started his journey in a small village in India and became the richest Indian-American entrepreneur in the United States, and that too with a net worth of $12.65 billion as of December 2024. Jay Chaudhry was born in the village of Panaur, nested in the foothills of Himalayas. His family didn't have much. They lived in a house without any electricity or running water. His parents were small farmers growing wheat, corn and rice to feed their family. But they always believed in the power of education. Even though Jay's parents never went to the school, they made sure that he got the best education that is possible. Now, this meant Jay had to walk 4 kilometers every single day to get to the school. Imagine walking on a rough plain of northern India every single day without the convenience of electricity or car. But despite these challenges, young Jay was determined to success. He worked really hard in school and excelled, even though the opportunities were few in the village. And finally, Jay's hard work paid off when he got into prestigious Indian Institution of Technology, IIT we call it. After finishing his studies, he left India and boarded his very first flight heading to America to study electronics and computer engineering. Now, this is where his journey towards entrepreneurship truly began. Jay didn't come from a family of business owners. In fact, his family had no experience in business. But Jay had a vision, a dream of becoming a successful entrepreneur. He once said, if Mark Anderson, the co-founder of Netscape, would start a company right out of college, why can't I? And with that, Jay started his own business journey. Jay never stopped learning. After finishing his master's degree, he went on to get an MBA and a second master's degree in computer engineering as well. But the most important lesson that he learned came from his parents and his humble beginning. He learned about hard work, honesty, and integrity, values that helped him throughout his journey. Jay's entrepreneurial journey led him to create multiple successful companies. His first venture, Secure IT, was sold for $70 million back in 1998. He went on to build more companies, including Air Defense, Cypher Trust, and Core Harbor, all of which were acquired. But it was in 2007, at the age of 47, that he founded Scalar, a company that would make him a global name. Scalar is a cybersecurity company that helps businesses protect their digital information. It uses the cloud-based technology to secure data without relying on traditional network boundaries. Now, this was a game changer, specifically as the world began moving to remote work and using multiple cloud systems. Scalar went public in 2016 and has grown to become a giant in the cybersecurity industry. The company's value is $31.63 billion as of December 2024. Jay and his family own about 40% of the company, making him the richest Indian American entrepreneur in the United States. Today, Scalar has around 5,000 employees around the world, helping business stay secure and flexible. The company's service has become essential for modern companies, offering strong protection against cyber threats while reducing the cost and increasing the speed. Jay's story is truly inspiring. From a village in India to Silicon Valley, his journey shows that with vision, hard work, and a willingness to learn, anything is possible. Jay is a proud example of the American dream, calling the United States a country of endless opportunity. But it's not just Jay who has made an impact. Indians like Jay have been contributing significantly to the US economy. From tech startups to global giants, Indian Americans have become an integral part of the workforce, bringing innovation, expertise, and strong work ethics. Today, Indian Americans are the leaders in the field like technology, healthcare, and finance, creating jobs and driving economic growth. Jay Chaudhry's journey is a perfect example of what can happen when you dream big, work hard, and never give up. He proves that no matter where you start, with determination and vision, you can achieve greatness. His success reminds that American dreams are still alive and well, and anybody can succeed if you have the right mindset and opportunity. Good evening. Tonight we bring you a story that's raising serious question about free speech and academic freedom of one of the most prestigious campuses. At the heart of the controversy is Prahlad Younger, an Indian origin PhD scholar at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or also we can call it MIT, who has been suspended following the publication of a pro-Palestine essay. So, let's dwell up into what exactly happened and why this case is sparking intense debate. Prahlad, a scholar in MIT's Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, penned an essay titled On Pacifism for the student magazine Written Revolution. In this piece, he critically examined the effectiveness of pacifist strategies in the Palestinian struggle. While the essay does not explicitly promote violence, it does challenge non-violent approaches. Now here's where the trouble begins. The essay included imaginary logos and posters of the Popular Front of the Liberalization of Palestine, a group that is designated as a terrorist organization by the US State Department. Meanwhile, MIT's administration flagged this as problematic, claiming the imaginary and the language in the magazine could be interpreted as endorsed violent or destructive action. The consequences for Younger were swift and severe. On December 4th, MIT suspended him until January 2026. Now, this decision not only halts his academic journey but also terminates his prestigious National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship. If we see his perspective, then he has clearly denied any intent to entice violence, stating that the photo in question were not provided by him. He believes the administration's actives are a gross overreach. Speaking through his lawyer, he said, "The administration accuses me of supporting terrorism because of the images included in the article, but this is a misrepresentation of my work." Now, the impact of this suspension has rippled across the MIT community. On Monday evening, about 100 students and supporters gathered at City Hall for an emergency rally. They called on city leaders to intervene and accused MIT of rejecting free speech. The rally's leader, who is also the president of the MIT Graduate Student Union, said threatening students' careers simply because of their activism is unacceptable. Now, this isn't the very first time when this guy has faced disciplinary action. Even last year, he was suspended for participating in pro-Palestine demonstrations on campus. But this later suspension, according to him, is extraordinary. In his words, these actions could concern anyone. Expelling me and banning written revolution sets a dangerous precedent for the right of all students and faculty. Well, this case has ignited a broader conversation about the balance between free speech and institutional policy. Critics argue that MIT's decision undermines academic freedom and punishes those who are raising their voices. Supporters of the suspension, however, say that the university must ensure that campus publications do not promote material that is associated with violence. Younger is not staying silent, that's for sure. He has appealed the suspension and is urging the MIT Chancellor to reconsider. Now, his fight has only drawn attention from civil rights organizations and free speech advocates nationwide. So the question is, where do we draw the line, protecting freedom of expression and enforcing campus policy? As Prahlad awaits the outcome of his appeal, the academic world watches closely. His case could set a precedent that impacts students and institutions far beyond MIT walls. In a tragic turn of events, a Tulsa man has been sentenced to life in prison for a brutal beating outside Kansas City Hotel. Now, this incident ultimately led to a victim's death 2 months later. This is a story of violence that shook the community and a journey of justice that followed. It was a quiet night in Kansas City on May 1st, 2023, when a call for a disturbance was made to the police around 2 a.m. The scene that officers responded to would forever change the life of one family and bring tragic consequences for one man. When the officers arrived at the scene outside the hotel near Blue Park Way, not far from Eastwood Traffic Way, they found a 68-year-old man lying in the parking lot. His injuries were severe, but the extent of them was not immediately clear. The victim, later identified as Rajesh Patel, was quickly rushed to the nearby hospital. Despite all the efforts, Patel was in coma for several months. On July 17, just over 2 months later, at the age of 69, he passed away from the injuries that he sustained that fateful night. On the other hand, the surveillance footage would later reveal the shocking and brutal nature of the assault. For over 10 minutes, the victim was repeatedly punched and kicked. The attack, which seemed senseless and unprovoked, lasted much longer than it would ever be imagined. The man responsible for this brutal attack was a 32-year-old Andrew Wilson, a resident of Tulsa, Oklahoma. He was arrested that same night on May 1st, 2023. When police took Wilson into custody, they found something shocking. Wilson still had the victim's blood on his shoes. According to reports, when arrested, Wilson admitted to the officers that he had beaten the man. The situation quickly escalated and prosecutors upgraded the charges from assault to second-degree murder. In October 2023, Wilson pleaded guilty to second-degree murder as part of a plea agreement. Under the terms of the agreement, that he was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. Now, life sentences are typically defined as 30 years unless the conviction is for the first-degree murder. Now, second-degree murder is defined as the international killing that wasn't premeditated. For Wilson, this sentence means that he will spend at least 30 years behind the bars with the possibility of a parole after serving that time. Now, as the family of Rajesh Patel mourns his death, they have a small measure of closure knowing that justice has been served. Though the pain of losing a loved one is something that can never be healed. As we reflect on this tragic case, it's a stark reminder of the impact that violent action can have, not just to the victims, but their families, friends, and entire community. In the US, violent crime rates have been a growing concern. According to FBI's 2022 Uniform Crime Report program, there were over 22,000 murders in the country. Now, this statistics underline the urgency of addressing violence and ensuring the safety of all community. The tragic death of Rajesh Patel is a reminder that every act of violence has consequences that reach far beyond the crime scene. For the family, friends, and neighbors of the victim, the emotional toll is incalculable. Patel's family now face the challenge of moving forward without him, and the journey is one of grief and healing. Wilson's sentencing in this case brings some justice, but it also leaves us with question: how can we work together as a society to prevent such senseless violence? Now, this city, like many others across the country, continues to struggle with violent crime, with an uptick in violent incidents in the past several years. Back in 2022, this particular city reported 157 homicides, which was a slight decrease from the previous year. But still a significant number, right? The city, along with other parts of the nation, has made effort to address crime through community engagement and enhanced law enforcement techniques. However, the fact remains that violence, specifically in the form of unprovoked assault, continues to devastate lives. While law enforcement and the justice system work to hold the predators accountable, the fight against violence requires the cooperation of the community. Good evening and welcome to tonight's broadcast. We bring you a heartbreaking story that highlights the plight of thousands of Indian women who believed that they were embarking a journey of love and partnership, but instead found themselves abandoned, stranded, and fighting for their dignity. The Ministry of External Affairs recently revealed the shocking statistics. 1,871 Indian women married to non-resident Indians have been abandoned by their spouses abroad. Now, this revelation came during a parliamentary session in response to the question by Rajya Sabha MP Sapnam Singh Sandhu. Now, these are not just numbers. These are the lived realities of women whose lives have been upended by betrayal. Now, let's take a closer look at this particular data. Dubai emerges at the top of these cases, with 1,044 women abandoned by NRI husband. Then followed by Singapore with 256 cases, Doha with 118, and United States with 112. And you know what? The problem spans continents. Australia reported 62, the United Kingdom reported 57, and New Zealand 45. Now, these numbers show the abandonment is not confined to any single region. It's a global issue, leaving women in legal, financial, and emotional turmoil. Now, what happens to these women after they get abandoned? Let me tell you. The stories are heartbreaking. Many are left in foreign land, often without knowledge of the local language or even legal system. For some, their residency status depends on their marriages, and when they fall apart, they risk deportation or homelessness. Others face a financial ruin as they are left without support resources or even the means to return home. Meanwhile, the Indian government has stepped in to tackle this crisis. Indian missions and posts abroad play a vital role in extending support to abandoned women. There are some of the measures that are being implemented right now. First is counseling and legal guidance. Women are informed about the legal procedures and mechanisms available in their respective countries. Then comes financial assistance. Through the Indian Community Welfare Fund, women are provided financial aid, legal help, and even subsistence allowance on a case-by-case basis. Then comes emergency helplines.
24/7 helplines have been established to address immediate concern. With all this, Indian Mission collaborates with the NGOs, women organization and local Indian association just to offer assistance to these women. Now, for women who are abandoned in India, the government facilitates a judicial process. Now, this includes enabling video conferencing to ensure that erring NRI husband appear in the court. However, despite these efforts, the lack of a formal assessment makes challenging to grasp the full scale of the problem within India. Now, beyond statistics, this is a deeply personal tragedy. Many of these women face humiliation, stigma, and loss of identity. Imagine being left alone in a foreign country with no family, no resources, and no way home. In some cases, Indian missions in countries like the United States have gone above and beyond, offering temporary shelters, return to the flight, and connections to legal aid. The senior official from the Ministry of External Affairs said that we want to ensure that these women receive a lifeline and ultimately can live lives with dignity and self-respect. But you know what? Government's efforts are not enough. Advocates are calling for stricter measures to prevent such cases in the first place. Ideas include mandatory pre-marital counseling for NRIs, better awareness campaign, and legal reform to ensure justice for the women who are at risk. There is also a growing demand for harsher penalties for NRI husbands who abandon their spouses. But the lives of these 1,871 women and countless others who may not have been reported their plight serves as a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities that are faced by women in the NRI marriages. While government effort continues, it is crucial that these stories are heard and that systematic changes are implemented just to prevent further exploitation. For thousands of women that are fighting for justice, the road is long. But with continued advocacy and support, there is hope that they can rebuild their life. Thank you for watching, and we'll continue to bring you updates on this important issue. Stay safe, stay informed, and have a good night.